What's going on, guys? My name is Powertrain. Today I'm going to be driving Norfolk Southern Train 13V to Conway. Currently just a little bit outside of Altoona, Pennsylvania. Preparing to go around the famous Horseshoe Curve. Let's see. Our train, 13V, is 6,788 feet long. We got 3.1 horsepower per ton on the point, 2 helpers on the rear, 50 loads, 54 empties, total of 110 units, 452 axles, and our speed limit is 55 miles an hour. Total tons, 8,659. It's a pretty sizable train by today's standards. Certainly not the biggest by any means. But it's nothing to stick your nose up at.
Norfolk Southern, milepost 253.1. Track 2, no defects. Total axle 452.
That's us right there. Fortunately, we got no defects on the train, which is always a good thing. Any kind of hot boxes or dragging equipment will slow you down. Of course, there's always the chance that it's a false alarm, but you always want to stop and make sure that everything's alright with the train anyway. But I can say that it is no fun having to walk the entire length of the train multiple times over. Because you think about it from this perspective. As the conductor, the guy in the left-hand seat, you get up, you go out, you walk the train from the front end all the way to the rear end. You check everything out and maybe everything's fine. You come around the other side and you walk all the way back up. It gets a little tiring. As you can see, I've got this little external display going on down here at the bottom right, covering the other MFD. I have done that intentionally so that it's a little bit easier to see what's going on with the train, for you guys especially, when I don't have it focused on the real screens like I have here. So, if that's cool, good. If it's in the way, just speak up. If you want me to move it, whatever the case may be. That was made by a member of the running community on a website called Railcoder. Got some other neat stuff there too that I tried to set up for this too, with an external cab signal display that would be over here, but it did not want to cooperate and play nice with the external display over there too, so I had to pick one, and I picked this one. The other one has a nice alerter feature, which is kind of cool. There is that built into the game already, I'll admit, but that one is actually a lot more realistic, a lot nicer. But it is what it is. Now, something that is added with this display here that's kind of neat is the ability to add automatic engine start-stop, which is a neat little fuel-saving measure that most, if not all, modern locomotives have equipped these days, especially the GEs. I know EMB has their own specialized system for it. I don't know if it comes pre-installed or not these days. I would think so. It's probably an option if nothing else. You know, it depends on if the railroad wants to cheap out on it or not. Or maybe they want to install their own specialized system once they get the order delivered. That's all a matter of, you know, choice, I suppose, at that point. But what it does is it makes the engine automatically start and stop depending on if there are certain qualifications that are met. Actually, I can bring them up here. Let's see, what was it? Shoot, I actually don't know where it went. I thought it was right here on the main screen. I just realized I don't have the EAT set up here.
Norfolk Southern, milepost 258.8, track 2.
It's 50 miles an hour, but the fastest our entire train can go, as you can see here, it's limited to 55 miles an hour. So if we hit a 60, we're not going any faster than 55 regardless. Fortunately, we're hitting clears all the way here anyway, but I guess I'm going to have to apply a little bit of dynamic here to get the speed under control and keep it under control. Lower that a little bit so maybe it'll be easier to hear me here. Let's see. That should be good. Okay. Speed is back under control now. Just gonna keep the dynamic brake set at setup position, which applies the absolute minimum amount of resistance to the traction motors. Dynamic braking is a neat and relatively unique thing to railroad locomotives.
Norfolk Southern, milepost 258.8, track 2, no defects, total axle 452.
So the way dynamic braking works is it essentially turns the traction motors on the wheels. If you're not familiar with locomotive technology, specifically diesel-electric locomotives, there's a big diesel engine hooked up to an electrical generator, and it creates electricity, and that electricity goes down to the traction motors on each wheel. Sometimes not each wheel, but most wheels. Sometimes there's an idler axle that doesn't get the traction motor. So when you're rolling down the line and you're not receiving electricity, you can basically reverse the polarity and turn the traction motors into miniature generators. Instead of receiving electricity from the generator, they're actually creating it. But where's that energy going to go? Well, in the terms of locomotives, it's kind of wasteful, really, in that it is turned into heat and dissipated through the fans on the roof. Instead of recharging a battery or something of that sort, which there are some modern locomotives that will do that, they're hybrids, but for the most part, it's just kind of wasted energy, which is quite a shame considering that the amount of energy that they create is quite a bit, enough to power an entire neighborhood with ease. Got a speed reduction coming up to 40 miles an hour, and that's in about 2.7 miles, but there's a hill coming up here, so I'm gonna just apply a minimum reduction here just to make sure that everything is gonna be golden by the time we get there. I don't want to make my train into a slinky. I'm gonna release the air here. Air brakes are a whole different beast. Still on a slight downhill gradient here. About negative 0.23%. It's just a nice, easy gradient. But my next signal is going to be an approach signal, and I don't know if there's something ahead of me or what the deal is here. But if I'm not mistaken, approach signals, they don't want you going much faster than 30 miles an hour past them, if I'm not mistaken. We're just a little bit past that now. Plus, we do have that 40 mile per hour reduction coming up. About 1.5 miles. But I can just let it coast for now. Let's see. On a 35 coming up in 2.9 miles. That approach signal's coming up in about 1/2 mile here. Yep, there we go. These are old school signals. These are built by the Pennsylvania Railroad. These are called position light signals. And instead of like this one over here, how you see that red off in the distance, they all used yellow lights. And 3 of them, and depending on the order that they're in, be it a line straight up and down, a line straight across, or diagonally, tells you what you're thinking about doing ahead of this, ahead on the track, tells you what you should be doing now. For example, that's an approach signal. That means that the next signal is going to be a stop signal, and that's going to be in about 2 miles. Speed is slightly picking up here, so I'm going to just apply a little bit of dynamic braking. And then once we get up to this red signal, or stop signal rather, because it may very well be one of those position light signals that doesn't use colors, I'm going to make sure that I set up the end of train device. Ooh, that might have been a little rough. Because, as it seems, I have not yet done that. I'm a bad boy. It should have been done before I even started moving the train. But, what can you do? Basically, what I'm going to be doing is going to the rear of the train and getting the ID code so that I can punch that back in on the screen here. Should allow me to stop the train from the rear end rather than just from the front end. And there are some use cases where that would be helpful. But it also shows that the marker is off. I believe I actually have helper units on the rear end. Yes, I do. I might fence them up for this. For the dynamic braking aspect here. Fencing essentially creates what you would call a fence between the 2 groups of engines. I, in this case, have 2 engines that are on the rear end of the train, and they can be used to push the train up a hill. They can be used to help dynamically brake the train with the dynamic brakes, and basically they're just controlled from right up here, from the computer screens. But if I want them to be controlled separately from my main controls here, what I do is I put up this fence between them so that instead of them mimicking what the engines on the lead end here are doing, I can do it separately. So I can have the units on the head end here in power, leave them in, notch 1 or something like that, just to leave the train stretched. And then I can have the units on the rear in dynamic braking mode. Very little bit, of course, otherwise you're pulling it apart, and that creates all kinds of issues going through that. That's how you end up with a broken coupler knuckle. Apply a little bit of air here. Bail off the engine brake. Start coming back on the dynamics. Beautiful. And now I am stopped here, about 50 feet from that signal. Put my headlights on dim. And change the settings here. And I'll just take off the fence so that it mimics by going into idle. Okay, now, here we are at the units on the rear. EOT ID 85051. Alright, now I'll go back up to the head. 85051. End of train. Modify ID code. Why won't you? There we go. 85051. Accept. Contest. Which is just going to check to make sure that it can communicate with. There we go. Contest passed. Alarm now. Alarm two-way. Arming. There we go. And it's all set up. Now, as you can see here too at the bottom, auto engine start control is active. 3 minutes and 5 seconds or so. So let's see. What I'll do here is I will contact the dispatcher. Let's see, the signal next to us now is clear. So I assume that means something is going to be coming, but we'll see. Oh. Looks like he has cleared a path for me now, so, yep. Alright. Off we go. That's the alarm to let me know at the rear started moving and then stopped moving again, so going a little bit rough here. I severely misjudged the amount of power I was going to need to start moving here. Oh, yes, because I'm on a downhill gradient. Whoopsies. Oh well. Now, let's see. Turn on my lights here too, so I can see some of my controls. Not that I'll need them, but it's always nice to be able to see your switches if you need them. Alright, and our track speed limit has dropped down to 35. So we're going to make sure that we keep it under that, like a good boy. You may notice I have the fence set up down here so that just my lead units are pulling and the units at the rear are just idling, because I'm going down a hill and I don't really need the extra power. But I might change that in a little bit for dynamic braking purposes. But for now I think I'm alright. So 13V goes to Conway, which is not currently represented in Run 8. So basically I'm just going to be driving this thing off the end of the track once we get all the way to the end. Which is right here. This is the way to Pittsburgh. Looks like that's going to be happening pretty soon, because we're right here. Although, looks like we got another train coming at us, and another one next to us. So it'll be interesting to see how the automatic dispatcher handles this. Hopefully he doesn't screw me over, like the dispatchers on the rail thing often seem to do to people. It's a very, very congested area. You'll see here there are 3 tracks. There used to be a 4th track. Then Conrail took over and decided it would be a great idea to rip up a lot of the, they called them excess tracks, but maybe they were at the time, but these days, with the traffic increasing, I mean, in some places it's decreasing, but a big thing with railroads is them just not having the foresight.
Norfolk Southern, milepost 268.1, track 2.
Which is interesting from a business perspective. You're always looking to expand and make things bigger and better and all that stuff, but when you consider that railroads are businesses, always looking to expand and hold bigger trains, more trains, longer trains, heavier trains, faster trains, you'd think they'd want more tracks. But the Conrail era was a little bit different. Conrail was a conglomeration, or a consolidation, in reality, of many different railroads in the Northeast that had gone or were going bankrupt. But they had essential rail lines that provided essential services to a lot of people and businesses. So the United States government stepped in and said, hey, you know what? Let's just group them all together, and then we'll federally fund Conrail. So they had the Big Blue for a while there, and then I believe it was the same year I was born, if I'm not mistaken, 96.
Norfolk Southern, milepost 268.1, track 3.
And they split it 50-50. Actually, no, not 50-50. I don't know what the exact measures were, but I feel like it was more like closer to 70-30 between Norfolk Southern and CSX. Although, technically, Conrail does still exist in some forms today. I believe in parts of Michigan. I know there's a line in New Jersey. I'm not sure exactly where else, but I'm pretty sure there's at least one other place. They call it CSAO, Conrail Shared Assets
Norfolk
Operations.
Southern, milepost 268.1.
Basically, it's just
track
a joint
2,
venture
no
between
defects.
Norfolk Southern
Total
and
axle
CSX.
452.
Just trying to manage the speed here. The curve is binding us a little bit, so it's kind of helping to keep us below the limit of 35. Oh wow, this thing hasn't even been recording, has it? Oh wow. Oh joy. Oh, now I'm gonna feel like the biggest idiot on the fucking planet. I've been talking to myself this whole damn time. Oh well, this has been a big ass waste of my time. Whatever. You live and you learn. This has really just been a big test run anyway. I'll probably end up deleting it later.
Norfolk Southern, milepost 268.1. Track 3, no defects. Total axle 400.
got a little bit more of a restricting signal coming up here. I believe that's approach medium. Yep. Just gotta keep it nice and slow here. Limit's 35 after all, and with that being an approach medium, that means approach the next signal not passing medium speed, which I believe is 40 miles an hour. I'm a little bit rusty on my signals. Slowly increasing the dynamic brakes here. Our grade keeps jumping around a little bit from about 0.5% to 0.6%. But the curves are also keeping us bound down a little bit because of the friction of the flanges on the wheels against the rails, so. Looks like a limited clear. What's that? Not quite sure what that one up there was. Medium clear. Track speed is 40 miles an hour, back down to 35 in about 2 miles. So we'll give it some juice. And we'll take the rear units out of the fence. DPU errors. Usually that happens when you're just a little bit out of the remote range of the units on the rear end. happens a lot when you're going into a tunnel or around a mountain. It just fixes itself in most cases. And when it doesn't and it can't reestablish a connection, it just drops out whatever units are in the middle or on the rear. That way you don't have yourself a little runaway train. Nobody likes them. Despite what some may say. I guess I'll bring it up to 40 while I can. Got about a mile ago until the 35 mile per hour reduction. So keep it at a reasonable speed for now. On pretty level track now. So this curve is really gonna bog us down. Not a big deal. Start giving it a little bit of dynamic braking. Keep it all bunched up. Passing, I believe this is Johnstown now. Track station. Made it down to 30, and we're at that 35 now. So I'll just take it off the dynamic brakes and let it coast. We're on about 0.5% downhill grade. That should start picking up on us a little bit. Should start seeing the change on the accelerometer there. Yep, there it is. Going into the green from the yellow. And it'll bounce around a little bit as we enter the curves and whatnot and get out of the curves. Just the buff and slack of the coupler motion will make things a little bit difficult for it to read for a time too. But once it settles out, it gets itself back where it needs to be. Looks like we are still decelerating though, so I'm going to give it some juice. Aha, because the grade is settling out. 0.03% downhill grade. That's hardly anything, but I'm going to take those 2 units and put them back on the fence too and drop them down to notch 1. We probably don't need that power. I should really probably drop them down to idle in reality. Yeah, there we go. It does take some time for the units here in the lead to transmit that signal all the way down to the units on the rear, which is why it takes a little bit of time for them to respond and show what they're doing here on the screen. And that's intentional, because if they were doing exactly what the lead units were doing at the same time, there's a good chance you'd have a lot of unnecessary slack action on the train and just all kinds of bad stuff. Slamming cars around, breaking coupler knuckles. Especially when you're starting a train. When you're starting a train and you've got the units pushing on the rear, and your goal is to stretch out the entirety of the train, take out all of the about 6 inches of slack between each coupler knuckle. Makes for a considerable amount of length once it's all taken up. So to not slam it around, you inch it out nice and slow and wait for everything to gather out. Then your rear units would apply a little bit of power just to keep it going at that point. Otherwise, it would create a bunch at the rear and a stretch at the front. Alright, looks like we'll be heading off from here to Conway. Have it. Pretty considerable amount of train. Another coal train. hell of a time. Especially if he's loaded. Oh yeah. Loaded coal train, and for him it's going to be all uphill. Sounds like he's got some helpers on the rear too. Sounds like they're working hard too. Those EMDs make for a good sound. Yep, and that would be our train getting deleted from the looks of it. Yep. Because the end of the track is up this way. Alright. So there you have it. This has been my first official test stream. Next time I will be sure to make sure that I'm not such an idiot, and that my microphone is not disabled. I don't know if it cut out somewhere in the middle of the stream, or if it was like that the whole time, but I'm gonna feel like a major idiot if it was like that the whole time. Alright, well, hopefully I'll be doing more like this, and hopefully there will be no issues next time, and I won't be sitting here talking to myself like a moron. I guess this stuff does that to you. Alright, well, anyway, this has been Powertrain, my first official stream. Alright, that's it. Have a good night. Stay safe.